All right, I think we have everybody on, and I think we have our live stream to Facebook going. So good evening and welcome to the main meeting of the Gungahlin Community Council. As you can probably see, my name is Peter Elford. I'm the president of the Gungahlin Community Council. Everybody who's joined the call will be muted on entry, and I will make sure that I unmute the people I ask to speak. And I'm sure others will wave and make appropriate gestures if I forget to do that. If you do need to ask a question, please feel free to use the chat window. Some of my colleagues from the executive will be keeping an eye on that, so please post to everyone rather than just to me in case I miss it. And if you're familiar with Zoom and know how to go to the participants list and raise your hand, feel free to do that once we come to the point where we're asking questions. I will now just get some content up here to guide people through this morning. Share screen, and we want that. So hopefully you'll all be now seeing a summary of what we'll be covering today. I'll give a short update on some of the activities of the GCC, and then I'll ask the Deputy Chief Minister, the Minister for Sport and Recreation, Yvette Verry, to speak to a piece we opened up last year with her around sport and recreation facilities in Gungahlin. We've got Richard Swinburne here from Argus Property. Will talk to us about what's happening with the transformation of the Magna Mart home hardware site. And then myself and Madeline Young from the YMCA will talk to the new development application that has been released for the establishment, formerly the Air Towers development. So just in terms of a quick update, I think it's very important to acknowledge that it's been a big week for the community in Gungahlin with the My Gungahlin business run by Mark Scarborough changing hands and becoming part of the regional media. I noticed Mark's on the call today, and I'm hopeful that Mark will continue to be part of the Gungahlin community. I'm pretty certain he will be, but I'd like to personally extend my thanks to him and his company, My Gungahlin, for the support and partnership they've had with the GCC over many years. So Mark, if you've got any humbling words that you want to share, that'd be great. I've unmuted you, but I'd like to congratulate you on a job well done and wish you all the best in the Gungahlin community.
Thank you, Peter. That was a bit of a surprise. Thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting being part of My Gungahlin, being part of the landscape for a long time, and as we put out, like in the news article about it, this was about the longevity of My Gungahlin. It was important that it had a long-term future, and you know, going to the region media is a good fit for that. So you know, I'm excited to see what comes with My Gungahlin, and looking forward to getting some time back for myself and family. But yeah, certainly I'm expecting to be actively involved in the wider region media group, and still representing the Gungahlin community. But yeah, thank you very much for those kind words.
No worries, Mark. And with the power that is blessed on me by using virtual tools, I now mute you. Look, just in other terms of quickly other things of significance, just this week I was very thrilled to get a call from Events ACT, who confirmed that they will be providing funding support for the Celebrate Gungahlin event, which has been deferred from the pandemic-prone 2020 into 2021 in the March or April timeframe. Final date to be confirmed, but that's a terrific boost for Celebrate Gungahlin, and given the level of interest we had leading into the event before we had to defer it, I'm sure it'll be great. We've had a bit of engagement around a couple of the development applications in the town centre for the cinema and the DHA office building. Both of them have provided less parking than regulations would normally require, which was a bit of a surprise to us. We've raised that issue with Environment Planning and Sustainable Development, and we have a response from them essentially saying that their modelling had shown that the demand was not there. The light rail is supportive of it, and in fact, they hadn't. There are various ways in which the planning code for parking can be interpreted, and they'd applied that. So we'll be sharing some of that with residents shortly. We were pleased to see 2 of the fast track projects announced by Transport and City Services which are stimulus packages as part of the ACT government's response to the pandemic. 2 of them landed in Gungahlin, more paths in Mitchell and along Horse Park Drive, and that's terrific. But we're also pretty keen to engage with the Minister around other things that could be done in Gungahlin that meet the fast tracks criteria. So we'd encourage all residents to contact the GCC through Facebook or email or phone, and just let us know if there are any shovel-ready projects out there that we could perhaps bring to the attention of the TCCS. I guess the other major piece of work we've been undertaking is what we'll speak to in the 3rd item today, the new development application for the establishment Air Towers building. With that introduction, it's my great pleasure to welcome an ACT Government Minister to the GCC. Mr. Berry has many hats, as I'm sure all of you will be aware, but today she's joining us as the Minister for Sport and Recreation in response to a meeting we had with her late last year, where we were seeking some guidance on how planning for new sporting and recreation facilities was being undertaken for Gungahlin, what was in the pipe, and how we can perhaps work better, we the community can perhaps work better with the various agencies responsible to realise a number of those projects and meet some of the shortfall between expectations of residents in Gungahlin, now that we've got 80,000 residents, and what infrastructure we actually have. So without further ado, I've unmuted you, Minister, and invite you to speak to the community.
Okay, well, thank you, Peter, and thanks everyone for letting me join your meeting tonight. Sorry, I'm on a phone and not on a Zoom. We've just had some getting advice from the government about using Zoom on our devices within government, and that there might be some risk attached to that. So apologies that if this doesn't work as well as you all would have hoped, but I can always come back some other time over the next, whenever you want me to, as long as I can fit it in. I'm happy to come and talk to you all.
Terrific.
So did you want me just to, I assume you already all know what's been going on in Gungahlin over the last little while anyway, and I think the most significant announcement for Gungahlin and for the football community is the home of football in Throsby, and how important that's going to be for obviously the Gungahlin, but more the broader Canberra community as well, having somewhere for people to call their home. I know Capital Football have been a really great partner in that project, and that Gungahlin Community Council came along to the various points along the way of the development of the announcement, and came along to what was a paddock or back then, and will soon become a fantastic football facility, but also will include a whole lot of different outdoor football fields, indoor futsal courts, and as well as associated amenities and a place for Capital Football staff to call their own. So that's probably the most significant for sports in particular. And of course, there'll be, in addition to that, the conversion of the Harrison District playing fields, the Taylor fields as well, 2 of the 6 that will be going in there, and more to come. As you say, the community is growing. And Peter shared with me, and I assume that, I don't know if that survey that you've been doing has grown since you provided us with responses to that back in February, Peter, but it would be good to see some of that raw data as well that you collected, that you offered, if it hasn't been sent through already. I just haven't seen it yet.
No, we
had a little bit.
In answer to your question, no, we ran the survey into January, and ended up with about 1,500, a little over 1,500 responses, and we're just pulling the results of that together, and very happy to share that with the relevant agencies to help them understand where people see the shortfall in expectations.
No, it's really important, and we talked with you about that we get engagement across as many and across multiple sources as possible to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community. Of course, with government, you're responding to multiple different community needs, and you try to make as many people happy most of the time, but having good feedback like you've gathered from the people who have been part of your survey is really important, and really does help support and feed into decisions that governments make around ensuring that there's proper facilities out across the whole of our city. Do you want me to just take questions, or do you want me to keep talking about other things that have been happening out there? Probably around the school facilities as well, because there's been upgrades around them. So one of the things that I think we talked about when you came and saw us was the Margaret Henry School, which has a covered netball court. It's not enclosed, but it's covered. But we've been trying to make sure that everybody within the community can use it, and of course now with the easing of restrictions, that'll be able to be used for sports to train under, particularly netball, to make sure that they put their bookings in and use that facility as well, because for a while there it seemed like nobody knew it was available, and we just want to make sure everybody knows that facility is available for use as well. As we move into a staged return and a very careful and cautious return, hopefully, to the new normal, as we navigate our way through this pandemic together. But those courts are available, and of course the Harrison basketball courts that were upgraded in 2018 are very, very popular and a really great facility for use of the sports community as well.
Yep. Well, one of the a couple of things we discussed was certainly perception in the community, and I think it's pretty true, is we're kind of getting to the stage in Gungahlin where it's kind of the final stages of the build of Gungahlin. And as you look around for areas of land that might be available for a tennis facility of 6, 10, 12 courts, or a basketball hall, or an indoor sports business, it's not clear to us exactly what land is left, or indeed whether any of those sports are engaged with the government around planning for any of those facilities. So be very interested to understand what areas in Gungahlin are actually still left, and it may not be hard to do that over the phone, maybe a map or a schedule, but and then what's the process for those sports to get engaged?
Yeah, and sorry, Peter, I thought after our meeting that we were going to be providing that information through the planning directorate, and get that advice on the map of Gungahlin, if you like, of what's left over. So that didn't happen? No,
in a word.
Okay, no worries. Well, I'll follow that up for you, because there was a couple of action items that we identified out of that chat that we had, and I thought that was one I thought that would have been pretty easy to get through to you. I'm sorry that hasn't happened. I'll follow that up.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is some areas are kind of obvious. They're marked as community use, and a range of things could happen. But then there are other areas that are either not clear on the zoning, or turn out to be a lot more flexible than the zoning suggests. And we've had talks from EPSDD about the community sites in Casey, and what they could or could not be used for, and and there's this in addition to all the things we need to meet sport and recreation needs, we also sort of interested in all the community services things. So we're very short on community rooms and community spaces, and there's no aged care out here. So in general, there's a bunch of stuff that's yet to come out to fill out Gungahlin as we'd hope. So, in terms of something specific, it'd be very interesting to understand how your portfolio of sport and rec helps people like tennis ACT, for example, who've been lobbying to get out here for years. Certainly, if we've spoken to ACT Gymnastics, although they've managed their own businesses down in Mitchell, we've spoken to basketball. ACT would love to get something out here in Gungahlin. And so we just have no idea how that all comes together. And presumably it all arrives on your doorstep.
That's exactly right. That's what we're here for. But yes, and as we were talking, we talk, and Sport and Rec talk regularly with all the sports communities across the city about where their needs are, about the growth in participation, and where the need is, where the growth is across the city, and making sure that we can meet that through our infrastructure contributions, but also making sure that they have facilities that meet the community's needs as well across the city. So, and we're lucky geographically that our city isn't too wide and there's not too much of a distance to travel to get to one side from the other, but making sure that we have the right facilities in the right place. And when we did the work with Sport and Rec over the last couple of years about where the need was, definitely in the north side, Gungahlin and Belconnen is where the growth areas are, particularly for sports like basketball and also gymnastics. Gymnastics we're working with on their plans for the future with the sites that they have in Belconnen, in the Belconnen Town Centre, and Basketball ACT on their facility in Belconnen. Fortunately, Belconnen has been able to do a lot of upgrades. One of the silver linings through this pandemic, that they've been able to do some upgrades to the centre while it's been not under use. And so when people do get the chance to go back to play there, it will be a really fantastic facility and really did need a good spruce up. So everybody who's been out there, I think that's a 30-year-old facility now, and that'll be something that everybody will look forward to getting back to. But the Education Directorate and the government is always engaging regularly with all the sports communities, particularly the peak bodies, regular meetings to find out what the need is and where we can support them. And of course, Tennis ACT, we've been working with Tennis ACT about expansion for their needs, particularly on the north side where the growth is, and also with netball as well. Netball are working through some of their internal issues with their clubs about how they're working and viability for the future. And so we're just going with their time frame about when they're ready for a facility and what that might look like and where it can be. But I can understand as Gungahlin gets to the end of its sort of final development areas in sort of Taylor and Throsby and Jacker and Kenny, there's not much left over then for other things that you might be thinking we need more of this or we haven't got enough of it at the moment. So we need to make sure that that's taken into account. Yeah, and so my work as Sport and Rec and also education is making sure we've got everything that we need out there, particularly for schools, but also working closely with Suzanne all around what are the community facilities that are needed out there in Gungahlin now, but also to make sure that we take into account growth into the future.
Yeah, and certainly we actually had Suzanne scheduled to speak a couple of weeks ago, but she was unavailable, and we need to follow that up. You mentioned, you've got these dialogues running. Is there a mechanism, or could there be a mechanism whereby we could perhaps have some visit of the community, perhaps through us, or more broadly through all the usual mechanisms the ACT government have, to make that progress on engagements more visible to the public? Because things like the world of football sort of just appeared, and it's great that they did, but how a lot of the community are ending up asking, where's this happening? What's happening with that? Why is that not happening? And this would, I guess, make my job easier, but it may make your job easier in getting the message out there that these things are underway. They're coming, fullness of time. Some sports are more organised than others, so they're prioritised, whatever it is. But it just seems like it's all a bit of a black box, and it's unclear. If you look at things like the Forward Land Release Program, you kind of know what's happening. And I was hoping it might be possible to get something like that for the sport, rec, and community service programs.
it's probably, oh look, I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses or anything here, but some of it is around contracts and around privacy and around making sure that we're getting the best bang for our community's buck, if you like. So announcing a spend on something before we've actually really made sure that we've got the details right, that we're not ripping off the community's money, that, you know, in the contributions it makes through their taxes, that we get that right as well. So some of it is obviously about making sure that all of that happens in the proper way, that it's announced as part of a budget process, because governments need to comply with a whole lot of legislation about how they spend money and how the governance around that and the transparency around that to our community when we make those decisions. So there's a bit of that goes on. But at any time that Gungahlin Community Council wanted to engage with any of those sports clubs, I'm sure that they would value your contributions and would be very happy to come and talk with you about their sport. They're always looking for opportunities to gauge the needs in the community, but also increase participation with their various sports. So they'd be very happy to come and talk with you about their sport and their aspirations for their sports as well. And then you would be part of their contributions, I guess, or negotiations with the government about what's the way forward. And all, you know, sports communities as well are obviously engaged with their various clubs in different ways about needs and aspirations and goals for those different sports across the city, you know. But I don't think that any of those clubs would say, no, please don't come and support our cause, Gungahlin Community Council. I'm sure that they would embrace it with both arms.
That's certainly our experiences. They're all very keen to move forward, but invariably it's a conversation around how do we find a patch of land. And I probably spoke to 4 different sports in the lead up to the meeting we had with you, all who thought it was an opportunity to move on to a new development in Casey or whatever it might have been. So, okay, well, we'll continue to do that and work with them.
Yeah.
One of the things you did mention is that there was a new tool coming along to help book facilities in schools and the like. Is there any good news on that?
Yes, and that is taking a bit more time than I was hoping, but we're also looking at getting that up and going for as we're sort of getting our way through this COVID-19 as well, to sort of make it easier for bookings to take place online, so that you don't have to rock up to anywhere and make it in person or in a complicated way. So that work is continuing, but that is a really important way, and you will have seen it. Anybody in your council who plays tennis will know that you can book tennis online now very easily. You don't have to go and get the key from the president of the club or leave it dropped off in the drop box or the letterbox at the club house. You can book online, and it's really easy. You can even borrow equipment from the tennis centre. You don't have to take your own if you're a first timer. So that's the sort of system we want across not just our sports facilities, but also in our school sports facilities, so that they can be booked easily online, and it's all one part of one seamless system.
Yep, sounds like a great aspiration. I'm going to step back from the microphone and allow someone else to ask a question. Mainul Huck is a member of the GCC executive and has a question for you. Mainul, you may have muted yourself. No, you're unmuted now. All good.
Got it now, yeah. Thank you, Minister, for coming and joining us. We have had some interaction with you in my previous role with Gungahlin Mosque. Thanks for your support and support from your government in the mosque. The question is...
I saw that, I drove past there and I saw there's been some work happening there. Is that right?
Yeah. Look, this construction will go on for next 20 years.
Good stuff.
little things that happens continuously.
Yeah.
We haven't finished 100% yet, but getting there.
No, of course not.
Yeah. The question I've got, many of my friends and colleagues, they've already raised. The infrastructure requirement of this area is huge, simply because our numbers are more here in Gungahlin area. One of the things that Canberra lacks, and we have raised in many places, many forums, including Nick Manika's days, we lack a great multi-purpose town hall type facility in Canberra.
a multi-purpose town hall. Yes. Yep.
Even you go to IAS, little IAS, they have a nice town hall. It is small, but it's good enough for them.
Mm.
In Canberra, we are nation's capital. Many years ago, we used to have a slogan, "Power up Canberra." Thank God we don't use that anymore.
Yes.
Canberra should have a power, should have a town hall that we as a Canberran can be proud of. And that can also serve the need of the community on different purpose, like the bush fair. We had to go to Dixon College to get shelter. We could do better. We should have a town hall that the community can be proud of. Community can use it. The town hall should be multi-purpose, not just for office purpose. It's multi-purpose community facilities that could be used for, for big events, for anything, many things. So I'd like to know what thinking you, as second in charge of the territory, could share with us. Anything that you could do for us. Doesn't have to be in Gungahlin. So long somewhere the community can access.
Yeah. So sorry, did you say which town were you talking about, the town hall?
Oh, let's just give a passing example. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, sorry. Yes, sir.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I guess we have more and different facilities that serve that purpose, but I hear what you're saying about a kind of multi-purpose facility and making sure that facilities that are for a particular purpose, like, for example, the Belconnen Arts Centre that's having upgrades there, could be used as a town hall for that purpose, as well as an arts facility. And the multicultural the multicultural centre that's in Civic, that was, kind of a town hall for the multicultural community, but of course it's grown since then. Our community's grown significantly since that evolved, and yes, we definitely need some more and bigger spaces for people to come together. And we've been considering that as part of our schools as well when we're building new schools, about what the need is within the community, not just for an education facility, but as a meeting place, making sure it has places that the community can come together and meet up, and also that it's accessible as well for sports and the broader community to use at various times of the day. So, for example, and this doesn't go to a big giant town hall question that you've talked about, but examples of where schools open up their facilities are in better times than we're going through right now, but opening up their libraries on Sundays and inviting the community to come in, not just the school community to come in and use the library and be part of reading sessions, things like that. Other schools are looking at ways they can open up their sort of playgrounds within their schools, but in a way that invites community to come together, not just ad hoc and accessing the playground, but actually coming together and building community in different kinds of ways and connecting with each other. So I think that's the sort of thing that you're saying is that Canberrans are craving for, is that real community connection, whether it's in a town hall or across multiple facilities across the city. I guess that's something we'll have to consider as our city grows, whether we need a big giant facility or whether we do it in a more intimate way and really use effectively facilities across the ACT that already exist and are already big, important parts of our communities, like our schools.
Yeah, look, we've certainly had people come to us from the community council and say they're interested in a facility that could seat 500 more for a large scale event. So there's clearly demand, and we don't have a great handle on that. But one quick question that did come up related to what you were just speaking about, Minister, was whether this new tool that's coming would also enable booking of halls and rooms for communities to use school halls and school rooms for community events.
That's the intention, and as you can imagine, it's a bit of work to get it coming together. And some schools, particularly newer built schools, where they'll have the hall separate perhaps to the rest of the school, easier as far as security is concerned. and then also those other access to other community rooms of how we can make sure that that's secure and accessible as well for the broader community. But I mean, the point is that our schools are used, during the day generally, and then just the sports facilities ad hoc. But it is available the rest of the time, and they are great facilities, and we need to make sure that they're being used by the whole community, because that's what makes them really strong when everybody's engaged within their local school.
No, look, everyone I spoke to in my work is they love using the school facilities, but candidly, they are finding it very frustrating because there are just not enough of them, and the demand greatly exceeds the ability to fill it. So, you take that, Bell. I have one more question from Cameron Leslie relating to mountain biking.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Minister. Thanks very much for spending time talking to us this evening.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a long-time cyclist in Canberra involving cycling sports and particularly mountain biking. And look, you might remember probably more than a decade or so, Canberra was a bit of a mecca for mountain bikers, mountain biking events, 24-hour races, things like that. It's waned a little bit in recent years, but going through a bit of resurgence. An international event called the Sea Otter was going to come to Canberra in October, but unfortunately has to be called off because of coronavirus. But that's just deferred. So I'll just focus the question specifically on mountain biking to a Gungahlin perspective, because one of the venues that could have been used in cycling competitions was Majura Pines. Are you familiar with that area?
Yeah, a little bit, not completely, but not intimately.
Okay, so it's an area of mountain bike trails in the pine forest of Majura, which is directly opposite the AFP Police Centre on the old Majura Road.
That spot. Yep.
So some damage was done to the trails when the Majura Parkway was put through. But as a mitigation, there was work to install new trails. There were some facilities, a couple of park benches, a toilet facility, etc. And the Majura Park commuting bike path runs straight through that area as well. So it enabled connection in the area for people to actually get to the Pines without driving. And it's a great facility for not just mountain bikers, because it has got some serious trails, but also for little young kids with little tiny pump tracks, etc. So there's the whole gamut. And a byproduct of the unfortunate coronavirus is that cycling has got a resurgence. If you talk to local businesses, they're going gangbusters selling bikes, and people are out enjoying the fresh air, the less traffic, etc. But some of these mountain bike facilities have waned in the past. Have many volunteers who go out and spend their time on weekends who build and repair trails. But some of these trails really need some serious attention. They need a little bit of machinery to go in and reconstruct them. I was just there on the weekend, or just earlier this week. So firsthand, I know some of the conditions of the trails, and they're a little bit dangerous, and they do dissuade some people from having a go. And I'm just wondering whether, as part of the government's position on increased active travel, wanting to be a cycle capital equivalent to the European cities, that there might be some funds available to tackle that. There's certainly projects for cycle paths, footpaths, etc. But this would be I would call it a sports facility, even though it's in the pine forest. Yeah, so that's probably my question.
Yes, I confess to having pumped up the tyres on my bike and gotten back on the bike after years of not being on it myself, and have great aspirations of riding my bike all the way from West Belconnen into the Civic, which is probably a walk in the park for someone like you. But for me, it requires significant planning. Yes, look, Cameron, if you want, I don't know what your time's like or anything, but if you wanted to get in touch with my office, because the bike trails aren't actually within my through Majura aren't within my responsibility, but as you say, they are. Obviously, bike riding is absolutely a sport and recreation activity, and I'd be interested to understand more the issues that you're talking about out at Majura Pines, and I'd be happy if you wanted to take me on a tour through a very slow tour, if you don't mind, to have a look at some of the areas that you're talking about, and I can definitely work with Mick Gentleman, who would be responsible to make sure that that work can be considered as a future project.
That'd be great, Minister. I've muted Cameron to take control again. I'm just conscious that we have a couple of other speakers up tonight. I'd also, Cameron and I are working together on trying to identify more infrastructure in general in Gungahlin for cycling, but we're also interested in the idea of getting a Majura Pines / Bruce Ridge / Isaacs Ridge kind of mountain biking investment in Gungahlin somewhere. Because all those others are a long way from Gungahlin. So biking is up there. The illustrious Mark Scarborough had a couple of items. Mark, you'll be punchy and short.
Thanks, Peter, and good evening, Minister.
Hi, Mark. Congratulations on your big run.
Thank you. The question I have relates to the indoor sports study that was conducted finished up last year. We had a presentation at the GCC on this a couple of months ago. One of the things that concerned me from that, the presenters, was that they felt there was no interest from commercial operators on a mixed indoor sports complex in Gungahlin. And I kind of questioned them on that further to kind of say, where did that come from? And they weren't able to answer. I know of at least one commercial operator already operating in Canberra that is busting to get into Gungahlin and would need some support from the government. And from the feedback we've seen from the Gungahlin community, there is a high demand for a mixed indoor sports complex as well. So it'd be good if that could be followed up, because like I say, there is at least one operator that is busting to get into Gungahlin.
Mark, put them in touch with Sport and Rec or with my office, and we can have a chat and see what they're thinking about in that space. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Look, questions have slowed to a trickle, so we might bring your section to a close, Minister, and thank you very much for coming. I'll follow up with a couple of those actions, cycling, certainly indoor sports. It's strange that other parts of government think there is no demand for indoor sports in Gungahlin, which is completely the opposite of what we've seen, and the other infrastructure needs that we identified. I can't believe that no one's asked a question related to schools and COVID-19, but I'm going to give that to you as a gift, that you had 40 minutes without being pestered about pandemic crisis. So
thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for having me on, and look after yourselves. Everyone's doing really great, and thank you, Gungahlin. And you're very efficient at running your meetings, Peter. I have to say. Well
I tell you, the power of being able to mute people is a mighty sword. Right, thanks very much, Minister.
I wonder if I can get a hold of that one day.
Good luck. Right, cheers.
All right.
Thanks.
See you. Bye.
Thank you. Now, no, I won't bother going back to the agenda slide because I don't need to. One of the sort of folklore sites in Gungahlin is the site that for many, many years was a hole in the ground before it became a Bunnings. And we all got very used to Magnet Mart being there. And then suddenly it wasn't a Magnet Mart, it was a Home Hardware. And then when Bunnings came in, it all became horribly derelict. Well, the solution to that is a guy called Richard Swinburne, his company, Argus Properties. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Richard and give him the opportunity to talk a little bit about how they came to be involved in the site and what's happening.
Thanks, Peter, and thanks for the invite to come on and chat to you. As you said, it's been the site has a history as long as Gungahlin has been there, and all due respect to Paul Donoghue and the groundbreaking task he did to establish one of the first large hardware centres in Gungahlin. Our history with the site started back in around October 2012 when we purchased the property. And when I say we, Argus are the managers and the trustees of, or we manage the trustee company that has ownership of the property. The property is actually owned by around 22 entities. Nearly all of them are self-managed super funds, and all of them are Canberra-based and Canberra people. So it's very much a Canberra-owned and Canberra-managed property. When we purchased the property, it still had about 15 years to run on a lease to Woolworths, and with the when Masters ceased operating, there was no opportunity to transfer this across as a Masters site, and Woolworths elected to rebrand it, as you know, as Home Hardware. When that was actually part of the Masters network then, and that ceased with Masters ceasing, and Woolworths needed to decide what to do with their 15 years of occupation there yet to run. We settled with Woolworths in mid-2018 for them to exit the site. It had been sitting there vacant for some time, and we started looking at repurposing the property. We had a Crown lease there that permitted bulky goods retail and hardware, which was fine. But as we went to the market for occupiers there, it became fairly obvious that it's very, very grey as to what is a shop and what is bulky goods retail. So we had to think about that for a while and went to the government, the ACT government planners, and said, there's a couple of important things we don't want to do here. We don't want to create a shopping centre. We don't want to set up something that's in competition to the core retail area of Gungahlin. But we do need to have the use shop in our Crown lease, and to go along and just simply put Crown lease in, the use of a shop in a Crown lease would be hideously expensive in terms of the lease variation charge, and also our what sort of car parking we need to provide there. And we discussed it with them and said, you know, we would like to put shop in, but we want shop with the limit that no shop should be less than 1,000 square metres, which is a huge shop. And they understood that, and it meant that when you've got a shop of that size, then we've actually got no shops that small. They're all larger than that, much larger. Then you simply don't have the car parking demand for a 2,000 square metre shop that you might for a 20, 30 or 40 square metre coffee shop or whatever. So I think the planners were quite relieved that we didn't want to put a supermarket there, and we didn't want to go into competition with the core retail area. So that worked very well, and I think, from what I can understand, the traders appreciate that as well from Gungahlin. So we then proceeded to vary the Crown lease to do that. We went to the market to find some occupiers, and there was really tremendous demand because we were offering something that really wasn't available in the rest of Canberra, that it was in a town centre and it was large floor areas. We moved away from using the terminology of bulky goods retail, and because that term is probably now outdated in planning vernacular right across Australia, and it's now just referred to as large format retail. And that covers pretty well any use that occupies a huge floor space. When we looked at the building, it presented a number of real challenges for us. First was obviously the age and quality. It had a couple of lives already in terms of users, and each had made their own mark on it. A big issue was the lack of a service vehicle access to the property. It was represented an underdevelopment of the site. There was a maximum permitted gross floor area in the Crown lease, and it was well under that. And it was a very difficult configuration to subdivide. So with the assistance of DNA architects and a competitive builder tender, we brought in Nicky Stein on board as very, very early in the day. So we had our group, Argus Property, representing the owners, and the architects and the builder all working together to come up with a solution that would achieve what we were seeking. I might just, if I can, put a plan of it up for you to see. I hope you're seeing that now.
Yep.
Good. I noticed that the plan that is on the My Gungahlin website is a very early version of this, but somewhat similar. But this is the as-built plan, and you'll notice that the old timber yard on the right-hand side has now been totally rebuilt and enclosed and extended to create 3 shops. The original main part of the building, the large block in the middle, has been refurbished to again provide 3 tenancies, and then the garden centre is a new extension on the left-hand or western end of the building. You'll notice that we've knocked almost the whole of the back of the building off. All the mezzanine, huge mezzanine structure has gone from inside, and we've created a roadway down the back that is actually wide enough to have easily 3 semi-trailers going in each direction at the same time, and a turning circle at the western end. This in part satisfies the requirement for the bulky goods retailing definition, which requires dock access for large sale items, and also just made the whole thing work from our point of view, getting all the service traffic away from the customers at the front door. We found that there was some considerable demand for the property, but we were I'll just take that down for a moment. We did have plenty of interest. It takes a long time to negotiate with major tenants that we have here, but also we had inevitable delays in getting the 3 concurrent development applications through the system. It was a very clogged system at that time. We had a development application to do the main building work for the timber yard and the original building, and another building application for the new extension over the plant nursery at the western end, and a 3rd building application to do the lease variation. All of them took time, but anyway, we made it through, and it was quite a good process in getting through the development construction phase. And around the 19th of March this year, our certificate of occupancy and use was granted, and we had nothing more before us than just getting the building up and running. It's never been announced who's going in there, but I noticed on your website it's well known apparently who is going there, so I'm not breaching any confidence by talking about it now, but of course Dan Murphy is in Tenancy 1, up and trading, and very happy to be there, and had no hesitation, of course, opening as COVID-19 came upon us. Tenancies 2 and 3, as you know, are going to be occupied by fantastic furniture, and we're looking forward to fantastic finishing their fit-out work and getting up and running in coming months. You all know that Tenancy 4 is Pet Barn, who are also up and running. They're going well as also. They're the smallest tenant here. It's actually under 1,000 square metres, but they're actually a bulky goods retail, so they're able to come in at that size. The next 2 tenancies are part of the Spotlight Retail Group, and the largest one there is actually Spotlight, and that's, we're really excited about that. Spotlight, as you know, not in the ACT at all at the moment, and this will really bring this centre onto the map. The other SRG tenancy is Anaconda, next door to Spotlight, also a large and very impressive floor space. And the final one, of course, is Club Lime, and they're absolutely ready to commence trading as soon as they're given the go-ahead. I was out there yesterday, and they're cleaning the windows, doing the final clean-up, ready to start, and fully equipped. It looks amazing inside. We're quite lucky to get Club Lime in that location, because none of the other retailers, of course, need windows in their space, and the Club Lime position has a tremendous glazed frontage overlooking the Oval, and it works really, really well as a gym. And I suggest that when you get an opportunity, you drop in there and just have a look through the window and the view over the Oval for the walking machines that are lined up along that window. So we don't know precisely when the rest of the fantastic Spotlight and Anaconda will commence trading, of course, Club Lime as well. But I expect that they'll probably be open late June, early July at the latest. It's a huge effort to fit out something like those shops and to bring in all the goods for all the items stock for the first time. And one of the tenants, 2 of the tenants there had, I think, 8 or 9 large containers lined up to bring in their equipment. So that's going to be a fairly busy period. One thing I haven't mentioned, and it hasn't really been mentioned widely yet, through this process we've been trying to decide whether we have a name for the centre, and it's quite likely that it'll be known by what's in there, who's in there. But there's a number of authorities that like to have centre names and addresses on the building so that they can find them. And after quite some discussion, we've landed on, we've decided to name the centre the Gungahlin Magnet, which is, as I started out by saying, giving respect to how the site started, of course, with Paul Donoghue, and the fact that most people in Gungahlin know that it was, you know, what was originally there, and still call it by that name. So whether it latches on as a permanent name that people refer to, we'll wait and see. But we didn't want a hackneyed shopping centre name. A lot of words that we didn't want in the name, and we feel that this just expresses the history of the site people remember it going forward.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great name, Richard. I think you'd be congratulated.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I'm happy to answer questions to the extent that I'm able. I said we're up and running. We probably would have been fully running now if it wasn't for COVID-19, but it's all as the signs go up one by one. It's a great milestone. Each one of them.
Yeah, look, I've just seen one question pop up. Are there any? It sounds like all of your space has now been taken up. No chance of fresh food outlet, seafood, vegetables, a bit like the markets, or?
No, look, some of those would require large floor space, but we didn't really want to go down the path of food because, once again, the shopping centres tend to do that, and this building was very, very difficult to accommodate shops that couldn't take the full depth of the building. We've got a pet barn there, and you can see the inefficient corridor that they have to the rear line. I think you'd find it hard to get things to work in a building as deep as this one.
Yep. Yes, just further question on when everyone's going to be up and running. It sounds it's kind of tightly coupled to tell me when the pandemic will be over.
Well, that's right. I think the operators of Club Lime are optimistic, and I hope it comes good for them. They get up and running very soon because they are fully ready to start. It takes 6 or 8 weeks to get the other large shops fitted out and stocked. So I don't really expect Anaconda and Spotlight to be there before the end of June.
Oh, that's great. No, it's like a space that so that classic annoying surely and I know Mark on My Gungahlin used to run a series of polls every so often. What would you want in Gungahlin? And certainly things like Spotlight always rated very highly, but somewhere to buy furniture and all the other things that people are putting into their new houses in Gungahlin's great. So it's for you and the other investors with Argus. We're really grateful that you're investing in Gungahlin and making a difference for the residents out here. So it's great.
All right. Thanks. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate that.
No worries. All right. Well, that takes us on to the third segment of our evening. I'll kick off with a little bit of history here, but we also have Madeline Taylor here from the YMCA, who have, I think, probably more than the average amount of skin in this particular game. So let me just try and get control of what I'm trying to show you. So I've just got a few PowerPoint slides I'm going to bore you to tears with. Step you with to give you some context. Regular attendees of the Gungahlin Community Council will be familiar with a lot of this because a lot of these issues we've been working on for quite some time. So let me just get this, go through this. So what we're talking about is a development application, which is essentially a developer has come forward with a proposal to do something on a specific site. In this case, the site is Block 6, Section 224 in Gungahlin. Most of you will be familiar with Mirabai Drive over here on the top left-hand corner, Anthony Rolfe Avenue going down towards the town centre, and this corner, which 10 years ago was meant to be an office precinct and now is full of high-rise residential buildings. The red circle is Block 6, Section 224, and that is the site where this development application that this development application applies to. Over here on the left, Block 7209, that's the Infinity Tower site, and down the bottom here, number 1 of 88, that's the emergency services building. The other building I've highlighted in yellow is the YMCA, just to give you some sort of overall context for how that comes along. Just to give you another view of this, this is looking, if you like, the other way from the north towards the south. On the right-hand side, you can see the Infinity Towers at 20 and 22 stories. Next door to the Jade building, which is under construction, and the Lumi buildings, which are 14 and 7 stories, which are under construction. Ruby behind all of them at 14 and 18 stories. And the first tower built in the area, or first one that was completed, was Mezzo, which is 7 and 12 stories over here on the left. And the development as proposed as part of this amended DA is this one here on the corner, adjacent to the residences in Gosard Street, just across the road, Gundaroo Drive from those residents in Risen Street in that section there. And this is 14 stories stepping down to 8, one building, and then an 8-story buildings. And this picture, as well as some of the other information, have been lifted directly from the development application documentation. So that's kind of the general lay of the land, and that's the development we're talking about. If you've not looked at this development application, you'll notice that the colours of this building in the original development application, which I'll come to in a moment, were a bit more green. The amended DA talks a lot about different finishes and different colours. This is the potted history, and again, for the GCC veterans, this will be all old stories. In November 2015, the proposal called Central Towers, which is now called Infinity, was approved. This was for 3 towers at the time, but they're all very large. 23 metres is about 10 stories, and somehow these 3 big buildings were approved. And that somehow was that there was a small clause in the precinct code that if you bought your lease before November 2010, and if you put in a proposal before November the 30th, 2015, then that limit on height doesn't apply. What then followed was a whole bunch of other developments that said, yeah, I know we don't meet the 23-metre rule, but we're going to be compatible with surrounding developments. And that's how Jade and the other pod projects and all those other developments got approved. So that's how we got all those big towers, and we've talked about that before. Well, the community was a bit underwhelmed by this, and we approached the Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate in 2016 and said, look, your precinct code's not working. It doesn't say, it says don't build tall buildings, but we're getting tall buildings. And that led to the Gungahlin Town Centre planning refresh. And lots of consultation. We spoke about that in the March meeting. In 2017, the Air Towers proposal was put out by a developer called Empire Global, and they proposed for that 2 26-story buildings on that site with a restaurant spanning the 2. And by the time it had reached the development application stage, they were proposing something a little less grand. They were down to 18-story buildings, but as part of the approval process, they modified the application, and they had a DA approved with that number for 16 and 18 stories, 270 units. And there was broad community and opposition from the YMCA and the Gungahlin Community Council to that development, but it was approved. In 2019, Empire Global announced a joint venture with Geocon, and that project was renamed The Establishment. Late last year, draft variation 364 was announced in response to the planning refresh, which changed some of these height and planning rules a little bit after the fact. And just on the 8th of May, this amended development application was submitted for The Establishment. So I know this is a wall of words, but kind of gives people some context for the conversation. Again, directly from the submission, this is what's changed from the original DA. There's more parking spots. They've taken out the units, residential units they were going to have on the ground floor, and replaced them with small commercial tenancies, for things like pubs and restaurants and hairdressers and laundromats and so on. And as part of that, they removed the mezzanine level in the original design. And one of the things that enabled them to do, as well as fiddling the ground floor areas, they increased the number of units from 270 to 290. They've removed some 3-bedroom units. There's a lot of detail in the papers. They've added a pool and a spa on the rooftop. As I mentioned before, they've amended some of the materials, louvers and balustrades. I mentioned the ground floor area, and a bunch of other little changes, some significant, some not particularly so. And there is a lot of paperwork in this particular DA. I have a printed chunk of it here, but it's pretty detailed. And then scattered throughout all the documents that are part of the DA submission, there's more notes around the impact. So the first part of this particular slide highlights the concerns the Community Council had in 2018 on the original development application. And to be honest, the issues still remain, that the height and scale, we believe, based on community feedback, was inappropriate for the site. Even though they've come down from 2x26, there's still huge developments immediately adjacent to residential properties, and also completely overshadow and overlook the YMCA site. We'll talk about that in a moment. We were not impressed by the proponents' claim that there was strong community support, because that was based on a survey that involved proposing a name for the site that involved a cash prize. So we don't think that was a pretty transparent way of getting feedback. And we wrote that up. We're very concerned about the impact on traffic, still are, and the lack of consideration for active travel, mostly walking and cycling, both around the precinct and to and from the precinct from the town centre. And of course, and we spoke about this in March, it consumes potential commercial office space in the town centre. So all this has now been lost to office space, and we're left with what's in East Gungahlin. After the DA was approved, we learned that, or during the DA approval, we learned that the proposal had been changed by the developer, and that change hadn't actually been publicly notified, that essentially the height of the towers had been reduced. So that was a bit of a surprise to us. And a lot of the 118 representations or concerns or submissions made to the development application were pretty dismissed. The response in the notice of decision was pretty dismissive about people's concerns and about some other factors like the removal of a registered tree. So there's certainly the Community Council, in terms of consistency at least, should be, will be making a representation around these concerns. However, I'll ask Madeline Taylor, who will need to be unmuted to get anywhere, to speak a little bit about the specific concerns that the YMCA have relating to their site and their operations, both during construction and ultimately after construction.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thank you very much for having myself and Steve on the call today. So there are kind of two groups to our main concerns. The first are kind of the more operational side, and I think they have the greatest impact on the broader Gungahlin community. So that's the shared driveway, traffic and parking. Like Peter said, some of the changes in the amendment increased the number of units. It's not as simple to say there are 20 additional units, so 20 additional people. They've actually radically changed the breakup of the size of the units. So for example, there are approximately 44 additional 1-bed apartments, about 43 additional 2-bed apartments. So they've actually reduced the larger sizes because they can't sell them. And in fact, they still haven't met their pre-sales targets, which is why we're sitting here in 2020, considering it was approved back in 2018. So the extra number of people, coupled with the additional commercial property or tenancies, which are in place on the ground floor based on this amendment coming in, mean that there's going to be more traffic coming and going. And all of this traffic is coming through a shared driveway with the YMCA. So that driveway is where the parents of our 87 children enter and do drop off and pick up every single day. Oh, thanks, Peter. This is a really good diagram Peter's done. So the yellow show our car parks. So these car parks service 87 families a day for morning pickup and morning drop off, afternoon pickup of children. You can see that this driveway, the parents will need to come in along with all the residents, large waste trucks who have no turning circle, as well as delivery trucks servicing the commercial tenancies will all use this driveway. You can see then on the right, the arrow that's horizontal, that's leading into the basement car park. What's quite interesting is in the traffic management plan, they state that all residents will be using the tram to get to work during the week, which is obviously laughable because we know that in Canberra, many people still drive because of various public transport issues. So we've got a very unsafe situation here, also very busy, and we expect that the blockages that will result in this specific driveway will then back up Swain Street, Gossard Street, as well as Gundaroo Road. And we know that those streets are already heavily congested. And there's nothing in the traffic management plan to suggest how that's going to be managed, other than everyone use the tram. So that's the first concern around that shared driveway. The next one is around traffic more broadly. So I've kind of touched on that already. And I think that the YMCA approach is not only to get this amendment thrown out, but also to get the approval on the original DA dismissed. And part of that is because the traffic management plan for this entire development was done back in, so I guess 2017, 2018. So that means that the mass of these high rises and the increase in residents and commercial operators has not been taken into account with this development if it was to proceed. So that's traffic. The next one, sorry, let me quickly just scroll down, is around parking. So this development has no parking allocated for visitors or for the customers of the commercial tenancies, or for approximately 30 of the apartments. So that means that in this area where you see tradies double parking residential houses and commercial properties, you see quite dangerous parking on verges, on the side of streets. That's just going to be exacerbated during construction as well as once it's built. And a requirement within the approved DA is that the traffic plan provides parking for construction workers. And as far as I can tell, that hasn't been able to occur because there is no free land. Geocon did approach the person who owns the empty block just down Swain Street, and he's declined to lease them any spaces. Similarly, they approached some other commercial providers on the other side of Swain Street, and again, they declined to lease them any spaces. So that's around the parking issue. The fourth one, and what I would consider the most important from the YMCA's perspective, is the privacy. And a big part of our campaign when this first sort of arose in 2017 was around the breaches to the Human Rights Act and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child Act, around having people in a residential large complex looking directly into an early learning centre, including where children are using the bathroom, having their nappies changed, where they're resting and where they're playing. So because of the community engagement from the Y and also from GCC and yourselves, so thank you, the developers did have to make some concessions. So in the approved notice of decision, they were required to provide fixed privacy screening to levels 1 to 4 to ensure no visibility from those residents to the children. Unfortunately, one of the flaws in the approval process, which we've outlined in our request to revoke the approval, was that those fixed screens were actually slidable, which means residents would simply open them and then look into the centre. Further to that, as Peter and I outlined to Geocon on Monday this week, in the amendment, they've added a significant number of balconies, as you can see on the picture. So that's the kind of the blacker looking parts of this diagram on levels 1 to 4. However, there are no treatments on the windows. So we're back to having these adults from their bedrooms, living rooms, kitchens, looking directly into children using the toilet, to be really sort of blunt. In addition to that, Geocon have also acknowledged that anyone of the sort of approximately 97 units facing west of this complex will be able to see into the centre. And in the original notice of decision, the approver acknowledged our concerns. There was about 1 page on this. However, they noted that the privacy screens and the fact that this building complies with the ACT territory plan was sufficient to override any further concern. So that lack of privacy is a real concern for us. So we are engaging with our regulatory bodies and partners to confirm if we could actually operate if this amendment and the broader building goes up. And they'll also be providing some support in the campaign against the development and the amendment. So they're our key concerns. I think the other thing just to note is that our concerns are really broken into the actual construction period and then when the building's built. And I think Gungahlin residents have had a lot of pain with all of the developments going up. And so this is going to exacerbate that. And actually my boss, the CEO, is putting some comments up. Thanks, Torian. And he's just reminded me that one of the options that we were exploring with GeoCon was having some sort of large shade sail or covering on top of our entire building and playground, trying to address the privacy gap. But a issue we have in Canberra and more broadly with children across the country is a vitamin D deficiency because they don't get outside. So for our ELC, we're already having significant shading as a result of this building, as are many other residents and commercial operators. To add a shade sail or any cover would deprive the children further. So that's just a sort of a brief summary of our concerns. In terms of what we're doing about it, we're working closely with Peter and GeoCon trying to find some solutions. We've lodged a request to have the approval of the original DA revoked based on a number of conditions not being met by the developer. We have requested an extension to the public consultation time period to allow us time to get the maximum number of representations from parents and community members like yourselves. And we're also launching a media campaign. So there should be a Canberra Times article appearing later tomorrow or Friday. And then there should be a flurry of activity through a media release that will go out tomorrow. So that's my main summary. Were there any questions or other comments that I could take down that might help, I guess, as we progress our campaign?
Yeah, so I mean, it's certainly from a GCC point of view, we have a position on record, but what we've done already is we've spoken with the Y and we attended a meeting with GeoCon on Monday at pretty short notice, but that was very interesting. We've sought clarification as to whether the draft variation 364 will have to apply to this development application because DV 364 actually has interim force and that may have some impact, and the relevant people have gone away to think about that. And of course, we've scheduled this discussion as part of our meeting, but really it's pretty important that anyone listening who has a view on this shares it broadly amongst the community, because it's a volume conversation, is how many people care about this that are prepared to say something, and that will certainly influence our position, but it also will influence the planners in how they assess the development application. So making people aware the fact that DA is in place is half the battle. The second is, what do you actually say and what are you actually going to challenge on? And I'd encourage everyone to, put your hand up and ask a question or send a chat question that we can ask to help give us confidence that we are accurately representing the community, but also representing the interests of the Y and other stakeholders in that area, not least of which are the residents who are immediately adjacent to the developments.
Can I just add?
Yeah, so please jump in, Madeline.
Yeah, just in response to some of the comments. So thank you for sharing them. The first one is just from my boss, just noting that the Y is a not-for-profit. And so we obviously provide this service to the 87 families in Gungahlin. That's important for them being able to be in the workforce or be active in the community. But also the very slim profits, ELCs are not a profitable venture, but what we do gain from Gungahlin actually helps us pay for things like our youth space and our programs for our aged customers around our physiotherapy and our gym in Chifley. So losing this business will actually impact our operations more broadly across Canberra. The second comment to make is around the ability to get the approval overturned. And actually, the basis of which I put in my request today to the Planning Authority was that in the notice of decision, there's about 7 different statements which or actions which the developer must take. Otherwise, the approval is either not granted until it's done, or alternatively, the approval is ended. The most simple to argue here is the fact that if the developer does not commence construction within 24 months of the approval being given, which was the 5th of September 2018, the approval is revoked. At this point, Geocon will not be starting construction until January 2021. The second part of it is there was a large number of documents required, crown lease variations, waste and easement arrangements to be put into place within specific timeframes, which, as to my understanding, as of today, have not been done. So they're the basis for which we're requesting the approval be revoked.
Yep. Yeah, look, I mean, interesting comment from JR about Geocon's, the Geocon experience in Belconnen, where things are pretty fluid, to be generous, but there's lots of changes being made and incremental alterations, and it makes it very difficult to really know what's actually approved and what actually will happen if things evolve, and that's why it's so important to have a consistent position. So yeah, so from here, I mean, as I said, we're certainly going to come back with our existing position. We're going to give our commentary on the quality of the original notice of decision, and represent that as being broad-based views. We'll certainly reference the data we collected as part of the GCC survey. We know that a very large, percentage, 58% of residents don't want high-rise buildings in the town centre. Sorry, that's not. It's about 50% don't want high-rise. 58% don't want more commercial space, and don't want more residential in the town centre. So more residential is not actually what people want. But again, we really do have to be guided by community on this. So give us a call, drop us an email, make a Facebook post, and let us know what you think. We're not anti-development. This would be a wonderful development if it was not where it is, packed somewhere back in East Gungahlin. But it's just too big for that particular site. But it's been approved, an amendment's being sought, and so there is an opportunity for the community's views to be heard. Any other questions for myself or Madeline? Comments, views? Wave a hand. Yep, Mark Scarborough is waving his hand. Get an unmute on that.
Yeah, I just, I made the comment before, and I just wanted to make it clear, I suppose, for Madeline, and, good on you for coming on to do your talk. I think the issue, unfortunately for you guys in the other childcare centre in that particular segment, is the two childcare centres certainly fit what the development was meant to be. It was meant to be a commercial precinct. It would have been a fantastic complementary service to an office complex, a number of office complexes there, where you can be providing childcare services to the workers that work there. So the business model for yourself and the other childcare centre was right on, but unfortunately, the situation of the circumstances now, where that whole segment has become a large-scale residential complex, it kind of does make this unviable for you, unfortunately, and you really are in that unfortunate position. I think I can't see, a way forward other than trying to get them to backtrack to that last development where there was a bit of consensus, and hopefully, the bare minimum, that's where it gets to. I think I can't remember. I did talk about my crazy harebrained idea. It's probably not feasible for anybody, but just thinking outside the box is that if there was a block of land in East Gungahlin, and there are blocks available for sale now, if Geocon buys that, builds you a nice new centre, and then you hand over that block, and then all of a sudden they've got another block that they can build, extend that development on. But crazy ideas. But best of luck to you. Hopefully you can find a way forward on this.
Madeline, did you Any response or?
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Mark. I think your comments are spot on. And in fact, we have asked Geocon to tell us if they're planning on making an offer on the site, either as a purchase or as a swap. Because as we've progressed the construction planning over the last 12 months, and now this amendment's hit us, our ability to operate the centre is, it's nearly nil. And like Torin, our CEO, was just saying on the comments before, for parents to choose a centre where they can't enter the driveway to do drop off and pick up, or where their children are experiencing dust, noise, lack of privacy, it makes it untenable for everyone. So, I guess if through this campaign, there's enough community sort of swell and the amendment gets voted down, and then Geocon have pressure, perhaps they might help us with that. But I think at this point where they're able to just get these things approved, despite not meeting regulations or, the significant community dispute against it, then, we may not have a choice. But yeah, it is exactly, Mark, I think what the best outcome for us would be.
I see Cameron Leslie has got his hand up, so I'll unmute him. Or maybe he's just clicked on the wrong button.
Oh, no, that's good. Am I good to go?
Yep.
Yeah, hello, Madeline. Look, yeah, I've been, I won't go on apart from just, I've got very similar thoughts and interests to you. I live reasonably locally and have concerns about the effects of the whole development, not just on business, but on the fact that there is no consideration whatsoever for local residents as well. So look, I'm just interested in doing what I can to contribute, whether it's, I have put in a number of DA representations in the past, but looking for an angle, maybe a centre of gravity that actually gets some more traction, whether it's a community council representation tagging on to the commercial objections for all those reasons you've also mentioned. And yeah, look, happy to be involved, basically. Apart from having vested interest, I also don't believe in being stood over by government or developers. So,
thank you, Cameron. I really appreciate that. And I think what Peter and I will be working on from both of our slightly different sort of angles is what kind of representations would make the biggest difference. And, is the angle about not meeting regulations or, lack of community consultation, what is the angle? So hopefully the Y will be putting out what we need our sort of parents and specific stakeholders to do, and then Peter will do the same. So any representations that you can make personally or that you can encourage others to make would be a significant help. Peter let me in on a really interesting fact that this development had 118 written representations compared to the average of 10 for these developments, and that the Curtin Shops development DA was thrown out in 2 days with about 250 representations. So for me, that gives me a benchmark to work towards. So if I can get if we can get a couple of hundred representations, we might actually have a voice here.
I actually said it was less than 10 for a lot of the other developments. Often, like half a dozen or, and 2 years later, someone would go, where did these 20-story towers come from? It's like, well, if you didn't pay attention to the development application, then this is what happened. So, all right. Look, I think we've come to a natural end of that conversation. If obviously we're very keen for any feedback on this issue, and if, like Cameron, you're willing to offer a little bit of support as well, then please make sure you pass along your views and thoughts. For those still with their video on, if wave at me if you wanted to ask a question, I missed it. Nope. We'll call that a wrap. Thank you, Madeline. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, the team from YMCA, and your thoroughness in getting engaged and inviting us in to be part of your journey through the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. We really appreciate your support.
No worries. So with that, I think we can close this meeting. Is there anything from other members of the executive we need to mention that we haven't? Don't see any hands up. Don't see anything in the chat. All right. Thank you all. Been a good meeting. We'll be back in June for the June meeting, second Wednesday of the month. Can't remember what that is off the top of my head. But if there are any hot topics you need to or want to see addressed, you know where to find us. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you.